Hey everybody, it is Saturday afternoon and we are going to take an impromptu trip around the world. I got a bunch of stuff going on this week and I got some new stuff happening next week, so I want to try to get everybody that is sort of the casual watcher caught up. I know not everybody watches all my videos, but a lot of people tend to watch these around the world updates and that gets everybody up to speed. So we're not going to spend a lot of time on the tanks that nothing has really changed, because we've got a lot to talk about on a few of the tanks where stuff has changed. This Waterfall is one of the tanks where nothing has really changed. Everything looks pretty good, as you can see. My Rex begonias are getting a little leggy here. They need to get trimmed back. All the plants that are in there in that lower basin seem to be doing well. They're not exactly thriving, but they're doing well enough. Got some water sprite up there. My dead nettles are recovering from my severe lack of watering. It almost shriveled up and died at one point, but now it actually looks nice and green. This, of course, is what I'm talking about here, is these dead nettles. Arrowhead plant up there is doing really well. And then the tank itself is finally cleared up. I had some cloudy water going on in here for a little while, and I just kind of let it ride, and eventually it has more or less cleared up. Fish-wise, nothing's really going on. Nothing's changed in there. Haven't added anything. Nothing's died. And the same goes with my foot tank down here. Nice and clear, everything ticking over like a clock, and as usual I never have any issues with this tank. It just runs smooth as butter. So we're going to go ahead and turn this big bright light out so it will minimize the amount of glare on the other tanks we look at. So coming over to my 29 Miscellaneous, the only thing I've got going on in here is that I had a one of my red blue Colombian tetras looked like it was on its last leg. It was all bloated and swollen, and it kept getting itself wedged behind the woodwork, between the woodwork and the glass in the upper right hand corner. And I meant to come back in here and get it out of there and euthanize it, and I don't see it. Oh yes, I do see it now. Actually, it's wedged exactly where I said it was wedged. You see that light spot right there? That's the dead fish, so I need to get in there and get that out. Otherwise, everything in this tank is doing really well. I haven't had any issues with it or anything else. I've just got that one swollen, sort of bloated red-green or red-blue Colombian tetra. A little bit of a look at my angelfish back there. I know we got a ton of glare on this tank from several different directions, but still looking good, still growing. Not growing really fast or really big, so I think it will be able to spend its life in this 29-gallon tank, and I won't have to rehome it into something larger. So this is the tank that a lot of you are probably familiar with the changes I've made. Let me turn this other light off too, just to reduce that glare. So this is my 55-gallon Gourami tank, and the big change I made to this tank was the light and the homemade light hood that I made over top of it. I wanted to have it sort of an open top tank. I wanted to have the Cree LED floodlights shining down into the tank like I have over several of my other tanks. But in order to do that, you need to raise the floodlights 9 or 10 inches above the water surface. You can't simply put them right on top of a glass hood, or they're too close to the water surface and you get these sort of beams of light, or these columns of light shining down through the tank, and I don't really like the appearance of that. So what I did was I built this large wooden hood, and then we housed the lighting inside of there. Because it's cheap plywood and it bows and everything, I had to put these little latches on each corner. You can see how it sort of wants to pop open as soon as I undo the latches. But with the latches on there, it holds it closed, and that way if any of the fish jump, they won't be able to jump anywhere. Simple hinges, lift it up, flip it over, and it sits right up on top of the tank and out of the way, and that exposes my floodlights that I've got hanging down. Got a little vent at the top. This dark section you can see here is just open to the back, and that allows any excess warm air to rise up and flow on out the back. And the light that I get shining down into this tank is just absolutely awesome. And if I want, I can come over here and do just what we're doing now, and more or less have an on-demand open top tank. If I'm in the room and I don't mind the tank being open, if any of the fish jumped out right now, I'd be right here to address the issue. But when I'm not in the room, I can just close the lid and no more bright glare on anything else in the room. So really, really happy with the way this worked out. In fact, I'm so happy with the way it worked out that I'm probably going to do this on other tanks as well. So let me get this lid closed down. I'm not going to worry about latching the latches for now. So I'm probably going to do that on my 55-gallon tank over there. Did not realize that Squeaker was down here taking a nap. I probably came in here and disturbed him by turning the light on. So this tank is going to be getting some work soon, but not just yet. I got other stuff in the works that need attention before this tank does. Water's clean. I stay on top of doing the water changes and all that stuff. The tank's just looking kind of raggedy because of the plants, or, again, we're going to do something to this tank at some point soon, but not just yet. One of the things I do want to do to this tank is to set up a big old light hood on top of it, similar to that, because I just absolutely love the way that Gourami tank down there looks compared to, just a regular old shop light that I have over this tank. So moving on to my 40 breeder here. I tried putting that jewel cichlid in this tank. It did not go well. I immediately began having issues with the Siamese algae eaters in there getting bullied and beat up. In fact, one of them had been bullied to the point where I believe it had dashed into the glass and basically concussed itself. I don't think the jewel cichlid itself was doing enough physical damage to the fish to injure it like that. I think it probably injured itself trying to get away. I left it in there. I did remove the jewel cichlid, but I left the injured fish in the tank. And it took a day for me to finally do it, but I actually did it while I was on my live stream with my members. I do a members-only live stream every Wednesday night. And while we were looking in there, I was able to go around the backside of the tank and look in from another angle, and I was able to see all 4 of the Siamese algae eaters still swimming around in there. So that one did recover and survive, and I got that jewel cichlid out of this tank in time, and so far everything is good. I can't believe we have not seen, or at least I haven't seen, a single fish the whole time we've been looking at this tank. I have 4 Siamese algae eaters and 2 rubber lip plecos in this tank, believe it or not. But none of them are going to make an appearance. But that's all that's going on with this tank. I tried putting that jewel cichlid in here. It did not work out. The fish that was injured did recover, however, so everything's back to the way it was in that tank. My 125-gallon New World tank is where I put that jewel cichlid, and it looks absolutely fantastic in this tank. I'm really, really happy with my sort of spur-of-the-moment decision to just put it in here and hope it all worked out. It took a day or two for it to start getting sort of used to the bigger fish in the tank, but it pretty quickly did get used to the bigger fish in the tank, and now it's starting to color up. We're starting to see that nice, rich red coloration in it. I can see all of those little iridescent blue speckles and spots all over it. It doesn't seem to be bothered by the other fish. The other fish don't seem to bother it. And so far, I think it's really going to work out well. The nice red, rich tones go really well with the earth tones. You can see how that red matches the woodwork behind it. It just really, really looks good in this tank. I'm really happy I put it over here. So I'm looking forward to watching this one grow up. They only get about 4 or 5 inches total, but again, 4 or 5 inches is a pretty significant size fish. It sounds small until you see what a 4-inch fish looks like. My rainbow fish are 4 or 5-inch fish, and they may not sound big, but again, you couldn't really house something that size in a 55. That would be a lot of fish for a 55-gallon tank. So the jewel cichlid is doing really well in this tank. The only other thing I can really think to update you about is the Pothos plant that I put in here. You can see the remains, a little bit of a stringer here, and then there's another little bit of a stringer here. It's still hanging on. It's got some green leaves down there. This is actually a whole new shoot that's coming out of a node, but the silver dollars in here are just ruthless when it comes to plants, and they have just been devouring any kind of plant material in here, except for this Anubias. They seem to do okay leaving this Anubias alone. They use it more for shelter than they do for food. But as I always say, that's because this Anubias probably has the texture of linoleum and they just really don't like it or whatever. But everything else in this tank is fair game. This is even Java Fern that you can see is, you know how lush and green my Java Fern looks in my other tanks. Look at it in here. It looks like I'm trying to grow grass in a goat pasture. Do goats go in pastures? Anyway, you get the idea. But to my surprise, they actually also eat the Pothos Plant. I have read where Pothos Plant contains, some kind of crystal silicate or something like that. It actually produces these crystals that are basically like little tiny shards of glass. And so when you eat the Pothos Plant, it hurts your mouth, it burns your throat, it can give you intestinal or digestional distress, and it often makes animals sick after they've eaten it. That's why a lot of people say the Pothos Plant is poisonous. It's not actually poisonous, but it does have these crystals in there that are basically like little tiny shards of glass, and as a result, it can become an internal irritant to anything that eats it. So I expected it to get left alone, but these silver dollars seem to not care one iota about that crystal loxalate or whatever it's called in there, because they devour that stuff, and I'm having trouble even keeping it alive. So planted tanks and silver dollars are a difficult combination to achieve, but we're kind of there. Like I said, these Anubias hang on. And so that's all we've got going on with that. So we're going to move on, have a quick look at my snail tank. I showed this last night during my live stream. I do a live stream every Friday and Sunday night. I don't have an actual filter in this tank where the filter pad is supposed to go. I just let the Java moss grow and become a natural filter, and then it grows out the front. It hangs down like a beard and down into the water column. And eventually when it starts getting so thick in there that it's, slowing down the flow of water, because there is water flowing through there. It's being pumped in and flowing through all that moss, and that moss is acting as both the mechanical filter and the biological filter. And so that's the only kind of filtration I actually have in this, is a living moss filter. And then when it gets to be so thick that I need to do something about it, I just rip the whole thing out and it just starts growing back, and before you know it, I got a moss filter in there again. So we're getting close to needing to replace my moss filter there, or begin the regrow process. So we'll go ahead and get that on video one day. Not a big deal, just ripping a chunk of moss off, but I'll show it because I'm sure somebody will be interested in watching it. Moving on to my 40-gallon native tank, which isn't completely native anymore. I do have a few red wag platies in here. Not much to talk about with this tank either. Haven't really done anything, haven't changed anything up. I did get the filter, or the pump rather, flowing again, and I got it flowing really vigorously. Now it's slowed down. That's probably just because it's getting some grunge and stuff on it, but I got in there the other day and really gave it a good rattle around. The power had gone out for a minute, and it did not come back on when the power came back on. And so sometimes, you know how the stator will sort of get stuck between phases, and if you shake the motor a little bit, it'll kick over and it'll start spinning. And that's what I had to do, but I had to do it pretty vigorously to get it spinning. And once it started spinning, I got really good vigorous flow again, like I haven't had in a long time. So not sure what really exactly happened there, but I got the water flow back up to a good high volume of water flow the other day. So now we're back to this. But that's just because the intake area has got snails all over it and probably grunge all stuck to it and everything. So I'll get in there and clean that off, and we'll have a nice good water flow again. My crayfish, at least one of them is still alive in here. I do see it from time to time. We actually got to see that the other night on my members only live stream that I do on Wednesdays. I don't know if I mentioned that or not. I know I said I do the public live streams every Friday and Sunday night at 8 p.m. Eastern time, but I also do a private live stream for my members on Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern time. And during that live stream, we actually got to see that crayfish out and about crawling around. So I know he's still in there. He does not have his claws. They have not developed yet. It'll have to slough and go through a shed cycle. And after it sheds, it'll start developing new claws with its new exoskeleton. So we're going to have to wait for that before it gets its claws back. But it is still alive and in there. So that's about all that's going on with the native tank. Stepping back over here so we can get a full view look at my 125-gallon tank. This tank is getting some adjustments made to it because one of my viewers is very, very generously gifting me some discus, and they're going to be here early next week. I should be getting them Tuesday, and so I'm trying to get the tank prepped up and ready because this is the tank they're going in. And I've added the 2 air stones. You can probably notice that right off the bat. I absolutely hate the way they look. It's driving me crazy, but I'm doing my best to accept the fact that I need to have those air stones in there in order to keep these discus nice and healthy. But it looks like garbage. I hate it. I absolutely hate it. I cannot stand the way those bubbles look rising up in the back of the tank. To me, when I see bubbles like that, this tank looks like it's being treated for cyanobacteria, because that's what I do. I treat, I put an air stone in tanks that are being treated when I need an air stone in there for some reason. I have a couple tanks that have air stones in them, and I've learned to be okay with them, I guess, but it's going to take an adjustment period on this tank. I do not like the way that looks at all. But, like I say, you do what you got to do. At least on this end, what I did was I got those little 4-inch plates, and actually you can almost make out the far left-hand side. You can see a little hint of blue. So it's those little 4-inch long stones, and in this case I just sort of tucked it underneath the gravel and buried it so you don't at least see it. You just see the bubbles coming up out of the gravel. And then on this one, I put it behind that big rock. If you look in the back wall, you can see the reflection of it, and that's kind of annoying, but whatever. And so that one I positioned with the bubbles flowing up into the flow in front of the power head, and that sort of spreads them out and gives us some more micro bubbles and is going to give us a really, really good, vigorous gas exchange. So that is in preparation for the discus arriving. I've been trying to get the tank temperature up. I'm not going to go the full 86 degrees, which a lot of people recommend, but I am going to get it up into the low 80s, 82 or 83 degrees, and I've been trying to do that with this heater right there that just continues to say 76. I had it set at 76 for the longest time, so I never thought anything was wrong. It just says 76 degrees because that's room temperature. And this morning I checked, and I already posted a little video. The heater is just stone cold dead. It's not heating at all. The light is indicating that it's trying to heat. I have it set to 83 degrees right now, so it's trying to heat, but nothing's happening. So that heater's being replaced. The replacement will be here Monday. I'll get the tank warmed up a little bit. I removed a bunch of this Java Fern not too long ago to allow for some more swimming around room, plus also allow for some more water circulation. And then last night during my live stream, I actually got in here. We did a really big water change, and I thinned out all of this valve. You see all these little white tufts and specks or whatever, those are little broken pieces of root that are still sticking up because I got in there. Oh look, there's that catfish I always talk about. I told you that Synodontis Catfish is still alive in this tank and getting pretty big. Did you see that drift by? There he is. Yay, we finally got a look at him. So I told you he's still in there and still alive, and he's getting pretty big. So there you go. It's a shame he's not more outgoing like my other one was. My other Synodontis Euteris, or Euteris, however you pronounce that, got out and swam around all the time. Wow, this is kind of exciting. This is the most I've seen of this fish since I put it in the tank as a little baby. So there you go, everybody. Bonus. Awesome. Sometimes I forget that fish is even in this tank. So that is another reason, if you watched my live stream last night, you will know I was talking about that big pleco I have in my 55, and I kind of need to do something with that, and the idea of putting it in this tank came up. A lot of people suggest that, but between the 3 chocolate zebra plecos I have that live on the bottom and that catfish that lives on the bottom, I think putting another big bottom-dwelling fish that's territorial to boot, I just don't think that's a good fit for this tank right now, especially since I'm about to add 5 more discus to the tank, so we won't be doing that. But that's what we're doing. We're getting the tank prepped. We're moving some plants. We're getting a little more open space in there so the water can flow, get a little better water circulation, a little better oxygenation. I'm hoping the higher oxygen levels will drive down the cyanobacteria. That's usually a good way of doing it. Cyanobacteria thrives in poor circulation, low oxygen type environments. And I've always kept this tank really, really calm and still. And so we're going to have to, adjust that to some degree, but not too much. Obviously, I'm putting discus in here. I don't want big, vigorous, flowing currents and all that kind of stuff. I need a fairly calm tank for the sake of the discus, and I think the air stones will give me the best of both worlds. I'll get plenty of gas exchange and water turnover and all that kind of stuff, but they won't create a lot of flowing current in the tank that will disrupt them. I mean, you can see my angelfish is just hanging in the air. It's not spending any effort to stay where it is, really. And so, again, for discus being in this tank, I don't think that's going to be much of an issue. But I've got 5 blue diamonds on the way. Again, they'll be here Tuesday, so make sure you're subscribed. You don't want to miss that when they get here. Probably won't show them publicly for a few days till they've settled into the tank. But my Wednesday night live stream for my members, we're certainly going to be looking at that, and I may even do like an unboxing video in my members area when they first arrive. They're coming from Vietnam, so it should be interesting to see what kind of shape they arrive in, being overnighted from halfway around the world. It's going to be interesting. So, moving on to my deep sandbed tank. We're not going to actually talk about the deep sandbed aspect of it just now. On my Sunday night live streams, I do a topic discussion for the first 20-30 minutes. I'll talk about whatever, and then we can kind of discuss that topic, or we can talk about whatever afterwards. And so this Sunday night's topic is going to be deep sandbeds, denitrification, does it work, is it worth it, so on and so forth. My experiences so far. I don't have enough experience with it to have a fully formed opinion, but I do have enough experience with it to have an opinion, and so we're going to be talking about that on Sunday night. In the meantime, getting back to this video, this tank is looking really good. I'm on the fence about how I feel about all that algae down there. It's the hair algae, and you can see how it grows in big strands and flows and all that kind of stuff. In a way, I think that looks really cool, and I'm really enjoying it. I love the way it looks all over this piece of woodwork, as long as it stays within reason, and I'm considering that within reason. We can see plenty of the wood grain, we can see plenty of the wood coloration and the texture. I've been able to get it beaten back off of my Anubias plants so that the plants are not covered in the hair algae, so that's fine. And again, up here, the nearite snails are doing a pretty good job of keeping that hair algae off of most things so that it doesn't look too bad, and I don't mind some of it in there. I just don't want it to be out of control, and that's where I'm getting to with this. Is that out of control? It's probably getting there. So I think when I do my next water change, I will just scrape some of that out of the bottom and just remove some of it. You can see it's even growing on my nearite snails over here. They got a coating of the algae growing on their shells. I wonder if they'll crawl over each other's back and groom each other. So that's about all that's going on in here. The 2 German blue rams that are in here are still doing well. As of, I actually haven't seen them. There's one in the back right now. And I don't see the other one, but I'm sure it's in there somewhere. I doubt it escaped. And if it did, I don't think it made it very far. Oh, there it is. It's in the other corner back there. So the 2 GBRs are doing really well. I haven't lost any of my little Embers Tetras or anything. Again, the tank's just ticking over and looking good. I'm really liking the way that shaggy, old, look that we're starting to get with that piece of woodwork and that algae growing all over it in there. I think that looks fantastic. So my little quarantine tank has one lowly little red wag platy left in it, and eventually I'm just going to go ahead and scoop that out of there and toss it in one of the tanks that has some other platies in it and be done with this. I'll get the tank cleaned up and sort of reset it. Not necessarily like cleaned up as far as like sterilizing it and starting it over, but I'll get the funky water out of there. I'll get the gravel and stuff cleaned out of the bottom and get the glass wiped up, so it looks like a nice clear tank again, and then I will once again have a quarantine tank. But that's about all that's going on with that. As far as Butterbean goes, you will notice the air stone in the back corner. Calm down there, Butterbean, just turn the light on. The air stone is in there because I am indeed treating this tank for cyanobacteria. If you'll remember the last time we looked at this tank, it was covered in that red nasty stuff. There's still plenty of it in there, but it's really getting beaten back. You can see how sort of red it still is over here. That's still living cyanobacteria, but a lot of the stuff has turned sort of brown and died off. This is diatom algae across the front here. That's not what we're talking about. But all this stuff that was in the sand, these were little bits and traces of red cyanobacteria that now just look like sort of brown crud all over the surface. So I'll be getting in there and clearing that out. What happens is the ChemiClean treatment kills the bacteria or the cyanobacteria that it comes in contact with. Like if you'll notice all the dead brown looking stuff on the wall. But as we get to where it's a little bit thicker coating towards the back, you'll notice how it's a little bit more reddish still. That is because the surface dies off, and effectively all of the dead cyanobacteria that's on the surface is shielding the stuff underneath of it. And so what I need to do between these cleanings is I'll do a treatment, I'll get in there, I'll scrub the tank down a little bit, I'll get all this stuff out of here, I'll try to remove as much of the dead stuff as I can, and then we'll go in and we'll have to do another treatment, and eventually I'll get on top of getting the cyanobacteria out of there. But it'll only be temporarily. It'll come back again. It always does. So I'm not really anticipating getting it out of there permanently. But other than that, everybody's doing well in the tank. Butterbean's looking good. I feel like I found his sweet spot for salinity. It seems to be 1.002, where he seems to be happiest. And I'm actually thinking about shooting a little video about that coming up here in the future, talking about brackish water and you know what brackish really means and so on and so forth. I get a lot of questions about that, and I haven't shot you know, a brackish basics type video in quite a long time, so it's probably about time to get one of those posted. So there you go, everybody. We wrapped it up in under 30 minutes today. That's pretty good for me. Back more or less where we started. In fact, we're going to have a bonus feature. I'm going to put you on hold for one moment while we go in the other room, and we'll have one quick look at my deep sandbed experimental tank that I've got going on in the other room. And we're back. So just shot a video about this tank the other day too, doing an update on its own, but in case you missed it, this tank is also ticking over like a clock. Everything is just fine. Haven't lost any fish. All of my yo-yo loaches in the bottom are still doing really well. You can see them all kind of hanging out down there together. I've still got plenty of snails in this tank. In fact, you can see these big ram's head snails right there. And I usually have a few of the big ram's head crawling on the rocks in here too, but I don't see any today. And somewhere in here I have a big nearite snail. So I've definitely concluded that the loaches are not like the ultimate weapon against having snails in your tank. I think they'll eat the smaller ones, and I think there probably are some species of loaches that will tend to eat larger snails. I've actually seen some of my loaches attack mystery snails. But as far as just like a solution to your snail problem, I don't necessarily think loaches are always going to be the answer. And the yo-yo loaches, at least these, definitely seem to not be too worried about gobbling up the snails, only the small ones. So there you go, everybody. That's a final look at my last tank I have down here in the basement. Make sure you're subscribed, that way you won't miss any updates. I do have a tank upstairs in my office. I got another one that I keep set up for my wife to enjoy. And as I said, I do live streams every Sunday and Friday night, and then I do a members only live stream every Wednesday night. So if you're a member, you'll have privy to that as well. All right, everybody, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed that one. I will see you real soon in the next one.